So over the past few years, there has been a lot of back and forth on who's fought harder opponents, KSI or Jake Paul. So I decided why not put all of them in a tier list and then at the end average out their numbers to see who's actually fought harder people. Now I'm gonna rank their opponents based off how good they were when they actually fought. So for example, Joe Fournier should be number 1 or 2 on this list if we're looking at his entire career, but because we're looking at when he fought KSI or Jake Paul, he's gonna be pretty low on this list. So coming in dead last, we have the GOAT Swarms who fought KSI, and I think it's pretty obvious why. Bars. Not only has Swarms never fought a day in his life, took the fight on short notice and looked like an average American a day before the fight, but he was also making diss tracks at KSI when he was supposed to be training, which shows he didn't really care about this fight anyways. This led to him being knocked down in the first round and then again in the second round, and you could just tell right here in his head, he's like, bro, I'm cooked, let me just stay down so I can end this fight. Moving on to number 13, we have Nate Robinson who fought Jake Paul. I mean, he was a 36-year-old retired basketball player with no boxing experience whatsoever, so this led to him being knocked down 3 times in the span of 2 minutes, and this legendary clip was born. Now coming in at number 12, we have Ben Askren who also fought Jake Paul. Now although Ben did have a background in fighting, he was once again 36 years old when he fought Jake Paul, never boxed a day in his life, and looked like a bag of milk at the weigh-ins. And as we all know, this led to another legendary clip being born, especially because of Snoop Dogg's commentary.
Get my money, Jake! Get my motherfucking 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 money, Jake! Get me my motherfucking money, Jake!
Going over to number 11, we have the OG, Joe Weller, who fought KSI. Now Joe was actually the favorite to win just because he was already pretty fit, whereas KSI looked like Nicocado Avocado, but then in the fight, Joe literally didn't throw a punch for the first 2 rounds, and when he did, the fight already ended, like he was just a punching bag. Coming in at number 10, we have the GOAT of GOATs, Luis Alcaraz Pineda, who went up against KSI. Now in this fight, KSI was the favorite, but it wasn't like 100% to 0. I mean, Pineda is a professional boxer, and on paper, it definitely looked like a challenge, which is why he isn't number 11 or 12. I mean, every second, Pineda complained of getting hit in the back of the head, including this one. Like, like what? This man got hit with the uppercut and was complaining it was behind the head, and then took the knee to reenact Deji. But moving on to number 9, we have Joe Fournier who fought KSI. Now although Joe Fournier is like the same age as Joe Biden, on paper this fight wasn't too bad since he 1 is a professional boxer and 2 had a record of 9-0 before fighting KSI. I mean, he did have some points in the fight where he landed some shots like right here, but other than that, no. And then obviously the elbow situation ended this fight off, but let's be real. Even if KSI didn't blast him with his elbow, Sleepy Joe still would have lost. Going over to number 8, we have Deji who fought Jake Paul. And yes, Deji was horrific when this fight took place, but we can't forget that Jake was also horrific, which makes this fight pretty even. I mean, you could just see here, Deji landing a nice 1-2 followed up with a left hand, but then Deji's kryptonite came, which is the later rounds, and he didn't even get dropped. His coaches just threw in the towel because he was getting pounded harder than Logan Paul's fiance. But because they were pretty evenly matched, even though Jake was a bit more of the favorite and the fight itself was pretty even until the later rounds, Deji goes in at number 8. Moving on to number 7, we have FaZe Temper who fought KSI. Although Temper took this fight on short notice, he's always been known as a pretty good boxer, and when you look at this fight on paper, Temper actually had more advantages being 5 inches taller than KSI since he is actually 5'11", and also having a 1-inch reach advantage. He also just came off a loss against Slim, which probably motivated him to train even more and win this time, and he was actually doing pretty good for around the first minute, but then this happened and that was the fight. Going over to number 6, we have Nate Diaz who fought Jake Paul. Even though this was Nate's first boxing match, he has an incredible fighting background and has shown multiple times that he has crazy determination to win and never gives up. And even though Nate Diaz was 38 years old when he fought Jake Paul, Surprise, Jake Paul picking opponents at least 10 years older than him. He actually performed pretty well, landing a good amount of shots. And you can even see in the punching stats that Nate only threw 31 fewer punches than Jake and had higher accuracy. So coming in at number 5, we have Anison Gibb, who also fought Jake Paul. Finally, an opponent under the age of 35. Now I know the actual fight was one-sided with Jake making Gibb look like a 4-year-old, but before the fight was actually signed, the entire internet was calling Jake out for ducking Gibb and how he's scared to fight him. KSI even confronted Jake face to face at his press conference for the Logan Paul fight and brought Gibb on stage so he couldn't continue ducking him.
Hey, you want Gibb?
Oh, you want Gibb?
Hey, yo, where's Big Gibber?
Big Gibb!
Hey, where's
Dibble
Big
is
Gibber?
coming to the stage.
Hey! Hey, bring him up!
2 seconds later.
You're scared.
Got your nose. Got your
You're
nose.
fucking scared.
I honestly think this was the second biggest upset in YouTube boxing history behind a fight that's higher on this list, and it wasn't even like a split decision win. It was a win in the first round, which ultimately boosted Jake's name a ton and led him to the massive win streak he got after this fight. But moving on to number 4, we have Anderson Silva, who also fought Jake Paul. With Anderson Silva being one of the greatest MMA fighters of all time and also holding the record of having the longest UFC title, this alone brings him up multiple spots on this list. And it's not like this was his first boxing match. He's fought before, 2 times in 2021 and then once again in 2022, meaning he's had some experience in this sport. He also did pretty well against Jake and gave him a run for his money, landing a good amount of shots while throwing some combinations in there as well. The only downfall is that he was 47 years old when he fought Jake, and he was definitely not 100% healthy. Going into the top 3 now, at number 3 we have Tyron Woodley, who once again fought Jake Paul. And this is pretty much for the same reasons as Anderson Silva, since he also had an amazing UFC career, but what puts him one spot above is that in the UFC, he was known for striking ability, which translates over to boxing, and he's also 8 years younger than Anderson. Also, because Woodley knocked Jake back to the ropes in their first fight and barely lost by split decision, that just made the fight even closer and showed how good of an opponent Woodley was. And the fight itself was pretty even for the first 6 rounds, but then we all know what happens next. Coming in at number 2, we have Logan Paul, who fought KSI. This was, without a doubt, the biggest upset in YouTube boxing history. Logan literally had every single advantage. He was younger, he was taller, he was stronger, he had a longer reach, and he still somehow lost. Like, bitch, how? But the fight itself was super close as well, with both fighters getting a knockdown but none of them counting, and then KSI edging the win by 1 point on a split decision. And finally, at number 1, we have Tommy Fury, who fought both. Tommy is the most experienced boxer they both have faced while being the youngest, and they both lost, so he's obviously the toughest. Now, if we average out their opponent's toughness, based on this ranking, Jake Paul's opponents come to a 6.5 and KSI's opponents come to a 7.7, meaning Jake Paul has overall faced harder opponents when compared to KSI. So this is my list. Let me know down below if you agree or would change anything, and make sure to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell to never miss future videos.